Imagine living in a room your whole life. A room built by everyone who ever told you who to be. The rules are simple. Stay small, stay quiet, stay in line. But outside that door, there are strangers waiting. Not monsters or villains. Strangers you were born with. The one who knows how to rage when you've been taught to stay silent. The one who craves chaos when you've been rewarded for order. The one who's unafraid to want more when you've been praised for wanting less. What if these strangers aren't threats, but the guides you've been gaslit to abandon? The parts of you exiled for being too much or not enough. Let's meet the allies you've been taught to fear. The ones who've been knocking on the walls of that room for years. The persona is the walls of the room you've been living in. The ones built brick by brick from every external directives and approval echoing in your head. Jung called it a survival tool, a way to navigate a world that rewards sameness. And it works. You get the job. You keep the peace. You become the dependable friend, the perfect partner, the acceptable version of yourself. But here's the catch. The longer you stay in that room, the more it shrinks. You start censoring your laughter to avoid being too loud. You abandon your obsessions because they're not practical. You trade your rage for politeness, your chaos for control, your hunger for humility, all to keep the walls standing. The persona isn't evil. It's a prison of practicality. But when you confuse the walls for safety, you forget there's a world outside them. A world where the strangers, the parts of you labeled too much or not enough, aren't threats. They're the architects of the life you're too afraid to want. But what happens when the strangers outside stop knocking and start breaking in? Let's talk about the ghosts behind the persona, the one you've been running from your entire adult life. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the parts of yourself you've disowned, denied, or buried, because they don't fit the hero persona you've crafted. Think of Walter White from Breaking Bad, a mild-mannered teacher who suppressed his ambition and rage until it erupted as Heisenberg, or Tyler Durden in Fight Club, a hallucination of everything the narrator wished he could be: chaotic, unapologetic, and free. These characters are not villains. They are manifestation of the shadow. The rage you swallow to keep the peace, the ambition you downplay to seem humble, or the desires you label shameful, because they clash with society's rulebook. However, the shadow doesn't vanish. It goes rogue. It leaks into your life as irrational hatred for a coworker who mirrors your insecurities, as self-sabotage when you're on the brink of success, as the voice in your head that whispers, "You don't deserve this." Jung's radical idea: the shadow is not your flaw, it's your unclaimed power. Walter White's ruthlessness channeled differently could have been leadership. Tyler Durden's rebellion, redirected, could have been creativity, your jealousy. A compass pointing to what you truly want, your anger, indicating to a boundary that's been crossed too many times. So ask yourself, what's your Tyler Durden? The part of you that's been locked in the basement of your psyche, screaming to be seen. Integration of your shadow is not about becoming a villain. It's about retrieving the fragments of yourself you've abandoned so that you can stop fighting ghosts and start wielding your full strength. Because the real battle is not against the shadow. It's against the lie that you're only allowed to be half alive. Now, imagine a force inside you that feels almost foreign. A voice that contradicts everything you've been told to embody. For Jung, this is the anima or animus, the inner counterpart to your persona, the masculine and feminine energies within us, the other part of our soul we've exiled to fit into a world obsessed with binaries. Think of Daenerys Targaryen in Game of Thrones. Her journey is not just about dragons and thrones. It's about integrating her animus, the ruthless strategist beneath her compassionate exterior, or Tony Stark in Iron Man, a genius armored in sarcasm, slowly embracing his anime. Vulnerability, sacrifice, and connection. These characters are not switching sides, they're becoming whole. The anima or animus is the bridge between who you are and who you've been taught to reject. For every man told to man up, it's the creativity and tenderness he buries to avoid being called weak. For every woman praised for being agreeable, it's the ambition and rage she silences to avoid being called difficult. But here's the twist. Your anime or animus isn't hiding in a dragon-filled castle or a high-tech lab. It's in the hobbies you abandoned because they weren't practical. The career path you didn't pursue because it seemed unrealistic. The love you didn't fight for because you were too afraid to seem needy. Jung's revelation: the anime or animus isn't a flaw, it's a rebellion, a refusal to let society amputate half your humanity. Daenerys embracing fire and mercy, Tony Stark trading ego for empathy. They're not compromising, they're alchemizing. So ask yourself, what is your unlived life? The artist, leader, or the lover you've locked away because the world rewarded a smaller version of you? Integration is not about balance, it's about collision, letting the exiled parts of you crash into your daily life until the mask cracks and something fiercer and truer emerges. The most dangerous prison isn't the persona or the shadow. It's the lie that you must choose either logic or intuition, strength or softness. Jung's truth: you're not meant to pick a side. You're meant to choose yourself in your totality. If the persona is the mask, the shadow the monster, and the anima or animus the rebellion, then the self is the storm. Not a calm after chaos, but the electrifying moment when every fractured part of you collides. Jung called it the archetype of wholeness. But let's be clear, this isn't Disney's happily ever after. It's Frodo Baggins returning to the Shire, scarred by the ring's darkness, yet carrying a wisdom that reshapes the world. It's Aragorn in Lord of the Rings, no longer just a ranger in the shadows, but a king who wields both sword and mercy, unashamed of his lineage or his humanity. Or take Wanda Maximoff in the MCU, a woman shattered by grief, fluctuating between avenger and destroyer. Her tragedy isn't her power, but her refusal to integrate it. When she becomes the Scarlet Witch, she doesn't balance light and dark, she consumes them. Jung's warning: the self isn't about erasing contradictions, it's about holding them like a double-edged sword. Think of Dr. Strange, once arrogant and isolated, now standing at the edge of the multiverse. His strength isn't in spells or relics, but in embracing his vulnerability, the weakness he once buried. That's the alchemy of the self, turning fear into fuel, pain into purpose, and chaos into a compass. But here's the raw truth: becoming whole isn't a destination, it's a daily rebellion. Neo in the Matrix doesn't defeat Agent Smith by rejecting his humanity. He does it by accepting he's both the one and a man afraid. The self isn't a polished statue. It's a mosaic of your messiest, most defiant parts. So ask yourself, what's your unapologetic storm? The version of you that doesn't beg for permission to exist? Jung's greatest lesson: you're not meant to find yourself. You're meant to forge yourself in the collision of who you were and who you've always been. Because the world doesn't need more heroes in shining armor. It needs people brave enough to stand in their mayhem and discover themselves within the chaos. Individuation isn't a checklist, it's a reckoning. Eleven in Stranger Things doesn't defeat Vecna by choosing rage or compassion. She wields both, refusing to amputate parts of herself to fit a role. Walter White in Breaking Bad, his tragedy wasn't becoming Heisenberg. It was forgetting that Heisenberg was just another mask, one that hardened until it suffocated the man beneath. Jung's work exposes a paradox. The closer you get to fixing yourself, the more you fracture. Individuation isn't about erasing flaws. It's about letting your contradictions meet each other. What's buried beneath your persona? The tenderness under your cynicism. The rage under your calm. The part of you that's tired of repressing itself to be acceptable. The journey doesn't conclude, it deepens. And the only question left is, what will you do with the parts you've buried? If this video sparked curiosity about the strangers living within you, consider subscribing. Next, we will discuss synchronicity, Jung's theory that déjà vu, repeating numbers and uncanny encounters aren't random, but a dialogue with the unconscious. Stay with us as we try to understand what it really means.